Hello, I'm Ethan Chazen. I am a New York-based organization development coach, and welcome to my little YouTube channel on all things organizational culture. Today, I want to take, I hope, a relatively amusing look at organizations who are doing good or attempting to do good for all of the right and all of the wrong reasons. So I want to start out with an amusing intro by highlighting a Jon Stewart Daily Show episode where he does this headline segment where he's kind of poking fun at organizations who are trying to promote or market the fact that they have or demonstrate great value. So let's start out here and then we'll talk on the back end.
Month is, of course, that time of year when corporations get together and financially exploit the decades-long struggle of gay people for acceptance and equality. Hey, remember when you were fired from that bank job after you were outed? Well, Burger King does. With a burger that has two bottom buns. Yeah. That's not a funny make-em-up. Scarred by conversion therapy, Skittles is releasing a colorless version of Skittles. Apparently not wanting to confuse gay people with competing rainbows. Yeah. And then there's this ad showing a family overcoming a father's deep conservative values. As you watch it, try and guess exactly what it is they're selling.
Mom, this is Amy. Hi, Amy. Hey, Dad.
My friends have one.
So that was not expected to happen, but nonetheless, it's an Oreos commercial with a daughter bringing her girlfriend home to meet her parents, and the father basically spending the whole weekend ignoring her. You see maybe one or two microsecond snippets of them enjoying Oreos, and at the end of the commercial, the daughter and her girlfriend look out the window of her bedroom, see the father out front doing something. The daughter goes to check on him. He's painted a pride flag on the fence. And this is the kind of thing that organizations are going out of their way to market, the fact that they're doing good things or that they actually have values. And that's what I want to talk about today. As you know, I dedicate a lot of time and effort in this YouTube space, my channel, to talk about organizations and the imperative of building amazing workplace cultures here in the 21st century. So that's kind of where I want to shine a light in this episode of Chasing the Dream. So how do you know if you're faking it as an organization? So I want to go to this kind of list, which I think is interesting, 10 indicators that a business may actually be faking its values. So when you make questionable business decisions, do you justify that? Meaning, if we don't do this, we're going to go out of business or we're going to suffer consequences. We're going to miss out on this opportunity. Anytime decisions or behaviors that you make are justified for the sake of the business's survival, that's a cautionary flag. So that's one indication that your business values may in fact be fake. Two, senior leaders or select individuals appear to be exempt from stated policies. This is a killer. I see this time and time again in my consulting practice, where organizations ostensibly have a set of core values that they make their employees follow, and yet there are certain people who are exempt, senior executives who act in deviant manners, high revenue performers, the rainmakers, the high sales achievers are perceived to be exempt. When you have two sets of rules in terms of ethical behavior, you've got none, and it's worse to do that than to actually have no stated values. So that's number two. Three, managers brush off questionable behavior, stating, it's no big deal. Listen, the last day job I had back in 2007, I headed up the marketing for a cable and telecommunications organization here in New York. My boss was pushed out of the organization. One of my leadership team peers took over leadership. He was an alcoholic, drug addict, abusive, And he was allowed to lead the team because he was the godfather of the person who came in and took over management responsibility of our division. It was one of the most toxic, horrible experiences. So you do not brush off deviant behavior from certain of your individuals and say, nah, it's not a big deal when that individual did or did not do certain things that have an adverse impact on your moral compass. So 4, employees feel scared or intimidated to question management. You have no idea how your employees feel unless you are constantly putting a finger on the pulse. So if your people are afraid to voice their concerns because they've seen what happened to other people, or they have a preconceived notion of how they're going to be dealt with if they express genuine concerns, they're not going to tell you in a survey. So you've already done something organically over the life cycle of your business by treating your employees or not treating them a certain way that have led them to believe they need to keep quiet and not speak out. And honestly, you're dead. Your organization is dead if you're doing that. So, number 5, others groan or roll their eyes when someone references company values. Look, if you're giving lip service to values, and I'm going to go through a little bit more of some examples of organizations who do and do not exhibit ethical behavior, but if you're faking it, your people are the first to know it. They know it. That's what culture is. Culture is how your employees act and what they do on a day in, day out basis. If you're going to kind of try and top down force values at them that they're not communicated with, why are these our values? How do they support our strategic business goals? Why do we choose these values? Did you ask me for a say in what I think our values are or what I agree to follow? If you're not going to do any of that, don't bother having values. They serve no effective purpose if your people haven't bought in. So number 6, customers are suing the company for unresolved issues or complaints. In my consulting practice, I deal with this all the time. If your employees are filing lawsuits, if your clients, vendors, partners, contractors, for example, if you have a reputation or if you've treated other organizations unfairly in terms of signing contractual agreements, having them do work for you, and then not paying them or forcing them to take a lower pay rate than you initially contractually agreed to, you're a scumbag organization. And you've got a horrible culture, and don't even talk about values to your people. I just alluded to it before, but number 7, suppliers are suing the company for not being paid. Bad business practice. Number 8, investors are suing the company for poor decision-making. I understand, and I talk all the time, if you've watched my other videos, in the 21st century on the need for a shift in organizational focus from shareholder value to stakeholder value. But nonetheless, businesses are run to generate profit as an outcome. So if the people who invest in your organization are not happy with the decisions that you're making, you need to be responsive to that and understand that the people who invest in your organization did so because they're part of your tribe. They're your VIP brand ambassadors, potentially. They're the group of people who have bought into the products you make, the services you offer, your leapfrog technology, your position in the marketplace, your track record, historical track record of positive financial performance. So if the investors are suing you, it's for good reason. Best example I can give is Peloton during COVID. They were killing it. They were crushing it. But then post-COVID, they've been struggling constantly to figure out their role in the marketplace. And people who invested in Peloton's business model during COVID are looking at the organization now going, what are you doing? What do you stand for? What's your place in the market? You need to rethink your strategic considerations. Employees are suing the company for how they're being treated. That's the number 1 tell. That should actually be number 1. If your people are suing you, and I'm not talking about 1 or 2 individuals out of, let's say, a few hundred employees or a few thousand. I'm talking about if there's a class action lawsuit. Look, there are oil and gas firms. There are pharmaceutical companies, biotech companies, manufacturers, if you're retailers. If you have a significant number of your employees getting together and saying, we want to fight you, our organization, because of the way you're treating us, that is a singular sign. You have no values, you have no moral clarity, you have no soul. If your people are unhappy, your employees, nobody that you serve is going to be happy. And number 10, senior leaders are being called out before a congressional committee. I mean, come on. I mean, come on. We see this in tech. We see this all the time with organizations, oil and gas companies, pharmaceutical companies, gun manufacturers, tobacco companies, social media platform providers. So if your senior executives are being called to testify because of, let's say, unfair business practices, monopolistic practices, unsafe working conditions, the adverse impact of your products and services on the groups of customers you serve. Those are some bad signs. So what I've tried to do is walk you through a list of signs where you should start to question not only the culture of your organization, but your values. And I don't want you to think that I am constantly slamming organizations. There are a significant number of organizations who are approaching values and with moral clarity and are doing the right thing to create amazing workplace cultures and therefore to reap the rewards, the benefit from that amazing culture. One of the organizations that I became aware of when I was doing the research for my second book, The Compassionate Organization, is an organization called Ethisphere. And they focus on the world's most ethical organizations. They have a whole process, a framework, a methodology of sorts in terms of how they look at organizations all over the world, competing by industry, sector, country, market, and they determine who are some of the most amazing places to work. So they do this every year. It's an annual award, an annual process they've been going through for going on 20 years. But I want to walk you through what Ethisphere stands for. So if you're an organization that's thinking about your values, use them as a model to kind of build your approach to shifting your culture. Ethisphere, I'm on their website, setting the standard for ethical business practices. So the journey to the world's most ethical companies starts with a qualitative and a quantitative assessment across 5 categories that Ethisphere employs. It's a proprietary rating system known as the ethics quotient, or EQ, not to be confused with emotional quotient, is at the heart of the selection process for this prestigious honor. And it truly is an honor to be recognized as one of Ethisphere's most ethical organizations. Featuring more than 243 multiple choice and text questions, the ethics quotient framework evaluates a company's performance in an objective, consistent, and standardized way. I don't want to spend a lot of time going through the methodology. You can go to the world's most ethical companies.com. You can look at Ethisphere's model yourself, but I want to kind of walk you through the honorees of who are the most ethical organizations, because you can search Ethisphere's list of annual honorees by industry sector, and you see that there are certain things that happen. And this is kind of the central tenet of my book, The Compassionate Organization. When you identify those organizations, as Ethisphere does on a year in, year out basis, you can see that they're award recipients. Their determined most ethical organizations are literally a who's who of the financially top performing organizations. So what does that mean? Focus. What does that mean? It means there is a straight through correlation between the organizations that have determined to be the most ethical organizations in the world and the fact that those ethical organizations are the most, they perform at the highest levels, they're profitable, they maximize employee potential, and therefore financially they're top performers. In fact, what I discovered in writing my book was, in using Ethisphere as kind of one of the models of the frameworks, it is no coincidence that organizations that have the strongest moral clarity, they employ serious value constructs, they follow a ethical pattern of behavior in conducting business, they outperform all markets such as the S&P 500. They also are number 1 or number 2 top performers financially in the markets they compete in. But let's kind of take this a little bit further. I love people.com. They always take a look at, the top, you're seeing all these lists now, right? You're seeing all these lists, whether it was Forbes, Fortune, Cranes. You're seeing now all these other organizations like People come up with lists of the top ethical, top caring, top value-driven organizations. So People's 100 companies in 2023 that put employees and their communities first. And here's some examples. Wanted to kind of jump. I'm sorry, I'm having some issues with my scroll down. Let's do it a little bit more manually. Cisco. Number one, Cisco is a worldwide leader in tech that provides the internet, that powers the internet, has an ambitious company goal at Cisco to positively impact 1 billion people by 2025. It's a commitment that begins with its people. All great organizations, when they want to achieve something amazing, they start with their people. It starts with their people on their first day. Each new employee is given $15 in their onboarding session to donate to a charity of their choice. You may be saying, oh, $15 is not so much. They have tens of thousands of employees. And if that's not so much, what is your organization doing? It's not just a symbolic gesture. It has a tangible result, and it also patterns for their new employees from day one. They model an expectation of a behavior for their employees of, look, this is a core value of ours. And from the very first day, we're going to reinforce that with you. The idea is that a sense of caring can and should be embedded in the DNA of the company. The idea is that a sense of caring can and should be embedded within the DNA of the company, and it's literally communicated from day one when the employee starts their tenure at Cisco. Cisco isn't leaving their employees to find their philanthropic footing alone. Oh, no. At Cisco, their Next Horizon Impact program actively connects team members, customers, partners, and suppliers to shape their strategy, form partnerships, and work together to make the biggest difference possible. Recently, they've met and sustained their goal of 80% workforce participation in volunteering. 80% of their tens of thousands of employees do volunteer work and donate and participate in programs that positively impact communities around the world. In fiscal year 2023, more than 70,000 employees at Cisco have generated more than 27 million in total donations and matching gifts. So this is just one example of a multinational corporation, a large organization with tens of thousands of employees whose focus is now shifted from 20th century shareholder value, right? You make your financial months, you make your quarters, you make a year. That's an outdated notion of a pyramid command control organization. To here in the 21st century, Cisco and other great places to work are driven by an almost pathological desire to have values, an ethical construct, moral clarity for sure, but to create a great place to work that has a positive societal impact. So the shift from shareholder value over here, 20th century, to 21st century stakeholder value. But wait, there's more. There are other organizations. Examples abound. American Express, so Edward Jones, Bell Bank, Target Corporation. The list goes on and on and on. The question is not who do you emulate? The question is, do you, as an organization, have a vision, mission, statement, core values, clarity in terms of what your relationship is with the world at large? If you almost think about it as an entrepreneur from day one, if you're starting or growing a new business, what do you want your legacy to be when you walk away from the business? What do you want that lasting organizational, reputational brand to be, if you think about it that way? So, Just Capital. I want to kind of really hammer home at a very granular level what this notion of great organizational cultures vis-a-vis value constructs, what that means. So at Just Capital, they do research, they survey what people in the public want or employees from their employers. So These are things that shouldn't surprise you. If you're a business owner, if you're in a leadership role, if you're in an HR function, people want to receive a fair living wage. We see literally wars going on about that in corporate America with retail establishments and their employees literally going on strike because they don't have a fair living wage. Employees want access to safe and accessible workplace environments. They want opportunities to be trained and developed and have career and professional advancement. They want benefits. They want work-life balance. They want to be able to work in a diverse and inclusive environment. These are not ridiculous requests. These are a low bar, quite frankly, in terms of what you're expected to deliver in today's workplace environment, in a post-COVID, 5-generational workforce where boomers and matures, as I've said often, are leaving the workforce in droves, and the fastest growing segments of the workforce in terms of demographics are millennials born between 1980 and 1996, and Gen Zs born between 1996 and 2010. So Just Capital, again, on their website. Earlier this year, we also spoke with Americans in focus groups, and we conducted it with our research partner, Harris, and to discuss how companies can create value for all of their stakeholders, employees, customers, suppliers, vendors, the communities they do business in, the environment, shareholders. So here's some of the things that they're talking about, okay? One analysis of the top 10 of what people are saying, employers are saying they want or expect from their employers is that companies who deliver these kind of values outperform, for example, a standard list of high financial performing companies as their stocks are traded on the Russell 1000. So here are some examples of organizations doing great work. 8 of the top 10 companies for workers, they actually publish their minimum hourly wage. And probably because they do that, they pay on average 1.3 times more than their Russell 1000 stock index peers. They pay $20+ an hour versus $15 an hour. Nearly all of the top 10 companies for workers conduct both gender and race ethnicity pay gap analysis. So companies who are high performing financially, who are high value, are constantly saying, are we getting it right? Are we getting it right in terms of our compensation vis-a-vis gender versus race? So they're not making subjective considerations. Gee, we are, and we don't know. They're researching it. Further, 9 of the top 10 companies for workers, these world-class organizations are top 10 companies for workers. So 9 of the 10 companies for workers disclose workforce demographic data by gender and race. So a few years back, I was asked to do some training and development for one of the world's largest retailers, their global supply chain team here in New York City. And in advance or preparation for doing the work, I went to their website. This is easy enough. You go to About Us leadership team, and they have tens of thousands of employees or multinational corporations, so they do business in many countries. And I looked at their leadership team, and I just eyeballed it. And this is what we call the eyeball test. Their leadership team was comprised at the time that I did the research, and this is not that long ago, maybe 5-6 years ago. Over 70 individuals, nearly all but 2 were males, all in their late 60s upwards. All but 2 were white. That's a bad sign. So when you look at, as an organization, the demographic, the ethnic, the composition of your workforce, that's literally just a starting point for diversity from a perspective. You want your people to have the broadest range possible of experience and life experience perspective, culture perspective, because you want the broadest range of problem solving, critical thinking, and background and experience to best serve your clients. 6 of the top 10 companies for workers are banks, which tend to outperform due to their high disclosure of minimum wage rates. Okay, I would say that that's just maybe one outcome or measure. I've done a lot of research and analysis on the large banks and financial services firms. They've exhibited over the past few years questionable ethics in terms of stealing from their customers, lying on their financial statements, automatically deducting monthly fees with unbeknownst to their clients. So let's take that one with a grain of salt. All of the top 10 companies for workers are members of the Just 100. So, one of the companies, Bank of America, I'm going to reserve judgment on that. Truist Financial, Ally Financial, NVIDIA. These are organizations that are constantly thinking and working towards values, having moral clarity, having a culture of caring. And the last thing is, I'll leave you with a thought. The distinction between doing good and being good. So I want to start out by giving a shout out. Mary Claire Ross writes about companies and organizations and how they behave, but does your company fake its activities around caring about the communities? So a few months ago, I caught up with the CEO of a mid-sized firm for lunch. He was keen on telling me that people only care about money. Clearly, that's an interesting, skewed perspective of that individual. His business that he had successfully co-founded was built purely to enable himself, his co-founders, and his employees to support their families financially, which is fine. He made that out to be quite noble. Yet there's no focus on how his organization created value for their clients. So that's interesting, because here's somebody just anecdotally that Marie Claire's sharing. She spoke to his CEO. Their focus, their primary focus is maximizing profit for themselves without any view or consideration of their clients and the communities that their people live in and are active in. So, on a positive note, this organization supports a lot of charities, but when I walked into reception right before Christmas, big Christmas tree, proudly displayed with gifts, until the CEO told me that he donated to charities. Here it comes. He donated to charities to improve his corporate culture and attract talent because his employees wanted him. That's key. That's what I want you to resonate with you as you kind of take away from this video, certain key outcomes, is if you're doing the good, just for doing the good, to receive some kind of selfish benefit, the doing the good for, let's say, recruiting and retaining top talent, that's problematic. That's problematic because it does not reflect on the heart of your culture. It's a very kind of what we need to get out of being good to benefit us. So I want to get into doing good by being good. It's common that organizations take a look at being good in terms of corporate social responsibility, which is, I think, why, in my observation over the last few years, corporate social responsibility was perceived to be the latest buzzword du jour, and it's fading in the same way diversity, equity, inclusion is fading, because it's just a phrase without any substance behind it. So if you're doing good, ostensibly for some kind of selfish, non-altruistic benefit, the perception, as Jon Stewart did with Skittles and Oreos and Pride Month, if you're doing good to get some kind of derived benefit, you're going to fail. You're gonna have a horrible way. And spending, might I mention, up to millions of dollars in your marketing to support these fake initiatives. Let's start out with a basic understanding. Your business may be focused on generating profit. That's why it's a for-profit, right? But the outcome is not generating profit. That's not the goal. That's a result of doing things really, really well. Your business does certain things that are positive intrinsically, creating jobs, generating growth over time, creating wealth. You can pay, viable wages. You can generate profits. Your tax dollars, not avoiding taxes as some big disgusting corporations are doing, your tax dollars can fund certain initiatives in the communities your people live in are engaged in. You can build infrastructure. You can strengthen the communities that you work in. You can improve people's well-being and mental health. When you see countries with a high jobless rate, you see a lot of unhappy, unhealthy, uncared for people. But here's what I want to leave you with today. Here's what I want you to take away. The real magic is when leaders in your organization find solutions to world problems through creating socially driven business enterprises. Think of the transformation of a new product or a service that you offer in terms of the aggregate benefits societally, like electricity, the television, the iPhone. Being good is different than doing good in this model, in this framework. The distinction is behavioral, and it starts from when the company was founded. Look at the records of your organization that survived, let's say, over the years, and you'll see that organizations that were doing good, and by being good, these organizations were founded on a mission, a principle to improve human life in some way. From Levi Strauss, Procter & Gamble, Disney. Importantly, these organizations that were founded to be good, they're still doing good to this day. Somehow, somewhere along the way, companies forgot that they were here to serve human beings. So what I want to leave you with is this. Values in an organization can either be those that are lip service, that you don't truly adhere to, that you're doing just for the reputation of it, that you're doing it for some pretty selfish kind of gain. That's one model. And people, especially younger employees, newer to the workforce, they see through that in a heartbeat. They see through full transparency your lack of organizational sincerity and your lack of desire to be good. And they won't seek you out. They won't want to work for you. And if they do, and they have committed to you, they won't stay with you because you don't share their values. Or you can be an organization that is literally built from the ground up on doing good, being good, having an amazing legacy. And if you're not sure about this, reach out to me. Let me know. This is what I do in my consulting practice. I help organizations transform from just good enough to being great. And if you like what I've talked about, you like this video, please subscribe. This is how I get the word out to other people to help them come up with strategies to build great organizations. So subscribe, share, like it. Let me know what you think in the comments. I'm always trying to look for ways to get the word out on organizations doing great things. Thanks a lot for taking some time out of your busy day. Hope you really enjoyed this video.